Capitalism and innovation, the biggest myth in history. It's not driving innovation. Humanity has existed for 300,000 years, and we have been innovating way before capitalism, hierarchy, and the state even existed. Before hierarchy, the state, and capitalism existed, we already domesticated animals. We created agriculture independently of each other's six different occasions. We created the writing system, or technically speaking, a proto-writing system. There are many examples throughout free history that we have innovated to the point that is almost unimaginable. And people think that these we need capitalism to innovate, and they look at the last 200 years as evidence of this. This means and the research and innovation will be in direct interest of everyone if all have means to do it. But under hierarchy, the state, and capitalism, this is not the case. Nothing has changed since the creation of capitalism. In fact, it may be worse. An example. Under capitalism, the most research is conducted in order to get an edge in the market by increased productivity or expanding production into new, previously unwanted areas. Any increased productivity often leads to unemployment, de-skilling, and other negative effects for those involved. But under anarchism, specifically anarchist communism, this will not be the problem. Moreover, it should be stressed that basic research is not something which free market capitalism does well. As Doug Hood noted in basic science research, and I quote, is heavily funded by the public sector and non-profit institutions like universities. The internet and computer, for example, were both projects for the Pentagon, and the government picked up the basic research and development tab for decades, when neither Wall Street nor private industry showed any interest. In fact, capital only became interest when the startup costs had all been borne by the public sector and there had been fully profit to be made. Good American individuals don't like to talk about the public sector, since their heroes is the plucky entrepreneur. The rise of such systems across the world indicates that basic research often needs public support in order to be done. Even such a leading neoclassical economist as Kenneth Arrow had to admit back in the 1960s that the market forces are insufficient. And I quote from his book Against Capitalism by David Squishcard. Basic research output on which is only used as information input into other innovative activities is especially unlikely to be rewarded. In fact, it is likely to be a commercial value of the firm undertaking it only if other forms are prevented from using the information, but such restrictions reduce the efficient or inventive activity in general, and would therefore reduce its quantity also. Nothing has changed. When modern society has produced so many informations, if not been for the Pentagon system, the space race, so on, take the internet for example, it is unlikely that this would have got off the ground if it had not been for public funding. Needless to say, of course, much of this technology has been developed for evil reasons, like nuclear weapons to bomb people, and purpose that will be in need of drastic change, or in many some abolition, before it could be used in a liberatory society. However, the fact remains that it is unlikely that a pure market-based system would have generated most of the technology we take for granted. As Neil Chomsky has put it, and I quote, this is going to be a lengthy one, Alan Greenspan, the head of the U.S. Federal Reserve, gave a talk to newspaper editors in the U.S. He spoke passionately about the miracles of the market, the wonders brought by consumer choice, and so on. He also gave examples: the internet, computer, information processing, lasers, satellites, transistors. It's an interesting list. These are textbook examples of creativity and production in the public sector. In the case of the Internet, for 30 years it was designed, developed, and funded primarily in the public sector, mostly by the Pentagon, then the National Science Foundation. That's most of the hardware, software, new idea, technology, and so on. In just the last couple of years, it has been handed over to the people like Bill Gates. In the case of the Internet, consumer choice was close to zero, and during the crucial development stage, the same was true for computers, information processors, and all of the rest. In fact, of all the examples that Greenspan gives, the only one that maybe rise above the level of a joke is transistors. And they are an interesting case. Transistors, in fact, were developed in a private laboratory, Bell Telephone Laboratories of AT&T, which also made major contributions to solar cells, radio astronomy, information theory, and lots of other important things. But what is the role of the market and consumer choice in that? Well, again, it turns out zero. AT&T was a government-supported monopoly, so there was no consumer choices, and as a monopoly, they would charge high prices. In effect, a tax on the public, which they would use for institutions like Bell Laboratories. So again, it's public subsidies. As for the demonstrated the point, as soon as the industry was deregulated, Bell Labs went out of existence because the public wasn't paying for it anymore. But that's only the beginning of the story. True, Bells invented transistors, but they used wartime technology, which again was publicly subsidized and state initiated. Furthermore, there was nobody to buy transistors at that time because they were expensive to produce. So for 10 years, the government was a major procurer. Government procure provided entrepreneurial initiates and guide the development of technology, which would then be disseminated to industry. Este, the free market also gave a negative impact on innovation. This is because in order to please shareholders with higher share prices, companies may reduce funds available for real investment as well as research and development, which will also depress growth and employment in the long term. What shareholders might condemn as uneconomic investment projects and research and development can and does make society as a whole better off. However, these gains are over the long term. Within capitalism, it is short-term gains which count. High share prices in there now are essential in order to survive and to see the long term. Anarchist economy with wide-scale sharing of surplus and resource will easily allocate resources for research and development, long-term investment, innovation, and so on, via the use of mutual banks or the confederation of syndicates and communes. Research will be allocated which takes into account the importance of long-term priorities, as well as social costs, which are not taken into the account, indeed are beneficial to ignore. Under capitalism, rather than penalize long-term investment, research and development, an anarchist economy will ensure that adequate resources are available, something which will benefit everyone in the society in some way. Este, and by socializing training via confederations or workplaces, syndicates will increase productivity via increasing the skill level of their members. Higher skill level will also tend to increase innovation and enjoyment at work when combined with the worker's self-management. This is because an educated workforce in control of their own time will be unlikely to tolerate mundane, boring machine-like work and seek ways to eliminate it, improve the working environment, and increase productivity to give them more free time. In addition to work conduct by the syndicates, education establishment, communes, and so on, it will be essential to provide resources for individuals and small groups to pursue pet projects. Of course, syndicates and confederations will have their own research institution, but the innovatory role on the interest amateur cannot be overrated. For example, of free software, operating system, programming languages, specific packages, and code, they show the potential for this. Thus, socializing the means of production will aid innovation and scientific development by providing the necessary resource, including free time, for such work. Moreover, it is also provide the community spirit required to push boundaries of science forward. Today, inventors often carefully hide their inventions from each other as they hamper by patents and capitalism, the bane of present society that stumbling block in the path of intellectual and moral progress. In a more free socialization, will ensure that innovators will be able to build upon the knowledge of everyone, including past generations, rather than hide knowledge from others. In case there were competitive advantages, knowledge will be shared, in which all involved as well as the rest of society. Thus, the spreading of scientific education, which will increase the number of inquirers. Faith that humanity is going to take step forward, and the enthusiasm, the hope of doing so, that has inspired all the great inventors, will be maximizing and innovating increases. Again, to emphasize, Humanity has done innovation without the state hierarchy and capitalism for 95% of human history. Do not get us wrong, technological progress does not imply that we are victims. Far from it, much innovation is the direct result of our resistance to hierarchy and its tools. For example, capitalism turned to Taylorism and quote unquote scientific management that the Soviet Union would adopt as well in response to the power of skilled craft workers to control their work and working environment. Like the 1892 Homestead Strike, for example. Este, which was a direct product desire of the company to end skilled worker control and power of the shop floor. Such management schemes never last in the long run, nor totality work in the short run either, which explains why hierarchical management continues, as thus technological the scheming worker always find ways of using new technology to increase their power within the workplace to undermine management as the decision making to their own advantage. We must complete socialization, unionization, and democratization of the means of production and the workforce, worker self-management, workers' councils. That is the only way in a completely decentralized form that shows that humanity has innovated way better than any hierarchical way of doing things. It's been seen many examples in revolutionary Spain with their innovation in agriculture, Ukrainian free authority with their innovation in weapons, the same thing with the John Zizek German peasant revolutionaries and the main innovation at the earliest examples of heavy infantry. Like I said, it is the only way to achieve it. And also by extension, I already made a video before this, we should just abolish the whole concept of copyright, patent, intellectual property, etc., which also prevents any form of meaningful progress.